Hello everyone, welcome back to the Fly Tier recapping quarterfinal action from the U18 Men's World Championship happening in Frisco and Allen, Texas. So hopping into today, of course, with the scores from today's game, starting with a 3-2 victory for Slovakia over Germany. Now, this was a game that I think kind of set the tone a little bit for the day, where we had Slovakia hop out to the early 3-0 lead, and all of a sudden, you could sort of see it. And as much as, yes, it was a Slovakia gets out to the early lead, what they end up finding themselves doing is choking up the lead. And it wasn't even the fact that this entire game was dominated by Slovakia. It was just, small little errors that really cost the Slovaks in this one. And obviously, you see they score 3-2 as your final. But the truth is, this game could have went to overtime. The Germans missed the net by that much, just shooting the puck over. But at the same time, Slovakia today, this is a game that they can definitely be proud of and take a lot of positives from, where they did play a good game. They dominated the Germans. And I looked at it after the shot totals, which honestly surprised me because they were a lot closer than what I would have given them credit for. But the Slovaks had the better chances through each and every part of this game. Just unfortunately for them, kind of coughed up the lead and gave up a couple chances that were just too good for the Germans, and they found the back of the net. But this game, back and forth, was one that, in my eyes, was exactly how you were expecting a team like Germany to play against Slovakia, where, they know they're not the better team, but they're going to find ways to find opportunities to eventually put the puck in the back of the net. And that's exactly what they did here today. So for Germany, following up just short, and for the Slovaks here, picking up the big win. And obviously now they'll play for yet another semifinal, a chance to play for a medal. They do have a tough test in the Canadians coming up, where they've had a little bit of poor track record against them. But still, I think this is a team that, if they play their game the right way, we've seen it at the juniors, where they're able to compete with teams like Canada, where although they might be a lot less skilled, they find ways to find opportunities to eventually put the puck in the back of the net. And that's sort of the theme of some of these countries that are coming up and have their game rising, is they're not necessarily the most skilled on paper, but they play the game the right way and they find opportunities through that. So that's what I'm looking for out of the Slovaks. We'll talk a little bit more about the semifinals coming up in just a little bit. But the second game of the day here was one that I think many were expecting, including myself. I know that this Swedish team hasn't, in my eyes, quite lived up to what I was expecting them to be. They're a team, obviously, yes, they lost to the U.S. in the preliminary play, but this Swedish team is the team to beat at this tournament, and I do expect that to continue. And as much as, yes, they might have already lost a game, I think the Swedes are the best team at this tournament on paper, and we'll see if they're able to contend for the medal. And of course, hockey is a game that's played on ice and not on paper. I know that's a quote that's been flying around all day, but you saw it in this game, just the skill level difference between the Finns and the Swedes, where in years past, it's been a tight game between the two teams, but today, it just wasn't. And, the Swedes got out to the early lead, and even you could see the momentum just come straight out of the Finns, where, the Finns are a team that are going to battle, and you got to give them credit. They battled in this one, and they held Sweden to enough of a margin where they could have come back at one point. But by the end of this game, it was obvious who the better team was, and we saw that. And we saw that today in droves as the Swedes won 7-2, advancing to the semifinals. Finland will be knocked out, but of course they're not relegated, so good on them, good for them. But first, for the Finns, it's not a lost tournament, and I think as much as, yes, you go up against a tough Swedish team, you're not on any expectations to beat them. And for Finland today, they did what they needed to do. Unfortunately, just came up short against a tough Swedish team, where Swedes found the opportunities in the middle of the ice, where in years past maybe they wouldn't have, and that was the difference. And this one, 7-2 is your final. And then let's talk about the Demons. And so for Canada, and this has been a tournament where, and the reason why, and I should probably mention this, the reason why there hasn't been that much coverage on this channel for this tournament, well, really none, is because they haven't showed the games in Canada. They show the Canada games in Canada, and that's it. So that's part of the reason why there hasn't been any coverage here on the channel. The one thing I will say is that for the rest of this tournament, there will be full coverage. Obviously, the semis and the finals coming up, and then we will be shifting our coverage to really start getting into the nitty-gritty of the Men's World Championships, which is right around the corner. We'll have our Team Canada preview, the predictions, and the preview for that tournament, because they are going to be showing those games in Canada. So whoop-de-doo. But the games we've seen from Canada at this tournament have been slaughterings. And I think today was a good showing of what happens when it's not a slaughtering. And I think as much as, for Canada, they got lucky with their group not having to play a team like the US or a team, like a Sweden, I think this team is going to get bulldozed when it comes to the finals. I'm not saying that they're not good. I'm not saying that they're not comparable on paper. I just don't think this team has seen the adversity enough to be able to take this tournament. And I might be wrong. I might be, completely off base here. And yes, today was probably the first Sweden game I saw and the first US game I got to see. But you could just tell there was a way the US played. There's a way, that the Swedes play. And it's just that night and day difference where Canada is still trying to find their groove, especially against tougher teams, where all of a sudden, yes, the Czechs have been thorns in their sides the last 2 years at the juniors and the quarterfinals. And yes, as they went to overtime, I was cursing myself. And yes, as they went down 1-0, I was cursing myself. And yes, as they went down 2-1, I was cursing myself. But there's good reason for it. And we've seen it in the last few years that the Czechs have designed a way to play hockey that counteracts the North American style. And we've seen it. We've seen it with the Finns. We've seen it with partially to do with the Swedes, although they've sort of migrated a little bit more into the North American style. But the Finns are, in Latvia too, at the juniors, we saw a lot of it with them, where the Czechs have found a way to evolve their style into one that counteracts the North American style of game. And we saw them play against Canada today, a real tough game. And yes, the goaltender stood on his head, which is probably a difference in this game. But at the same time, a lot of the chances from Canada were perimeter outside shots. And whether that's against Latvia at the juniors this past year or against the Czechs at the juniors this past year, it's just a constant theme with this Canadian team where they're unable to, sort of adapt to what they're seeing and change their looks, where, teams like the Czechs are always tinkering with their systems to try and find ways to counteract the Canadian offense. And that's exactly the difference in this game, where, you have 3-2 victory for Canada. So good, or they're into the semis, whoop-de-doo. But at the same time, this Canadian team, in my eyes at least, should have lost today. So for Canada, yes, it's a win. Good, chalk it up, great. For the Czechs, something to be very proud of. They had every opportunity to win this game today. Unfortunately, couldn't close it out. So that's what we have for Canada here. 3-2 is your winner in overtime. And then to the U.S. game, and this was another game where, very similarly to the Slovak game, where, the U.S. And Latvia, and I'm trying to find the right words for this game, because the truth is the U.S., they looked really, really good today. And they looked really good, and then all of a sudden they struggled. And it wasn't a struggling in the physical side. It wasn't struggling in the skill side. It was just a mental collapse. And we saw, I think it was 3 or 4 penalties in the span of a minute. And when you do that, Latvia, a team that's looking for any opportunity, we saw it at the juniors against Canada, any opportunity you give them is going to end up in the back of your net. And sure enough, the game got back to being close after the U.S. was looking dominant, like they were going to kill them, and the game was basically over. Then all of a sudden, you give a couple penalties in a row, and then the game is back to being close. So for the U.S., yes, it's a win, chalk it up, 6-3, great, good for you. For the U.S., they have to make sure they're playing the game the right way. You think of their semifinal matchup opponent, it's going to be Sweden. You take a nap against the Swedes, you let them go to the power play, they're going to burn you. So for the U.S., yes, great, 6-3, chalk it up, it's a win, it's a Latvian team, whatever. But the truth is, this game should not have been as close as it was. we'll move on. There's not too much to talk about here. 6-3 is your final, which sets up our semifinal matchups. Sweden will play the U.S. Canada will play the Slovaks. But to the news, with Germany too little too late, Germany had some problems getting going today, and we saw the Slovaks really dominated play for the most part. But for Germany, just falling a little bit short. They had every opportunity. They had a good shot today, in my eyes at least, to get there. They just fell short. So for Germany, just a little bit too late today. Very well could have won this game, but fell a little bit short. As for the Slovaks, just holding on. That's what they're going to have to do. And especially look at who they're going to be playing in the semis. It's going to be Canada, and they're going to be looking for some blood after the last time they absolutely pummeled them. Don't be surprised to see the Slovaks try and play a tight game and just hold on for as long as possible. Something to keep an eye on there. As for the Finns, with no finish today, I think it was 22 penalty minutes with a 10-minute misconduct. So basically 6 power plays for the Finns. Just couldn't find and couldn't really turn that momentum. They had an opportunity, and then all of a sudden it just kind of fell apart from there. So for the Finns, no finish today. I know I make a joke about the Finns in every video, so I know I'm not going to get to the rest of this tournament, so here it is. Enjoy, everybody. And then for Sweden today, domination. Once again, have to clean up the discipline side, very similar to the U.S. If you get the U.S. onto the power play, they're going to burn you. So something to keep an eye on there. It could be a dangerous part of Sweden's game. If they are able to clean it up, they will have a much better shot, and we will see it, of course, whether or not they are able to. And as for the U.S., vice versa, they are also looking to clean it up, and if they can, they'll be okay. So the Swedes today, domination outside of a few tinkering parts, but overall a good performance today by the Swedes, and they looked really good against I wouldn't say a walkover Finnish team, and that's what you need to see as they look ahead in this tournament. Then to the Czechs we go with so close. For the Czechs, they are a team at this tournament that I think had a shot to knock off a team like Canada, and they look good today. Just unfortunately fell a little bit short in overtime, and they were looking for that demon hunter, and that's exactly we're gonna talk about next with the facing demons for Canada, where everyone on that U18 team has seen it, watched it, lived it, even been a part of it for some of the guys, where they've seen what it means to lose to the Czechs at the juniors, and 2 years in a row of that now, and then you go and play the Czechs here at the U18s. You go to overtime against them, you don't look great throughout the game, and you know it. It's like, for our North American fans, it's like the Leafs, and I know the Leafs are in the middle of blowing another lead again here in the series, and I'm sure they're going to win it tomorrow. But it's the fact that you are 1-12 in series clinching games. You know that number in the back of or 1-13 now. You know that number in the back of your head because it's just there. And it's the Czechs and it's Canada at a double IHF quarterfinal event. And you know it in the back of your head that it's not a lock. And all of a sudden, you know it that it's going to be a dangerous one. So for Canada, you face demons, you get over demons, great. Chalk it up, it's a win, move on to the next game. But something to keep an eye on, where the Czechs still are not walkovers at any of these tournaments. So Canada has to stop treating them like they are, because they're not, and they are ready to kill you if you do give them that ice, which they did in today's game. But we'll call it a wash. We'll say, you know what, next game's game 6, and it's all going to be fine. We'll see if Canada can move on in this tournament as they continue their success, hopefully, into, of course, the semis and eventually the finals. We will see, of course, with that. And then to the U.S. we go with discipline problems. Sorry, I already talked about it a little bit, but just have to clean it up, especially if you get out to an early lead. Can't be giving teams opportunities to claw back in, especially a team like the Swedes. You can't give them that opportunity because once they get that ball rolling, it's a tough hill to try and stop that ball. So that's what we have for the U.S. As for Latvia, Carpe Diem, seize the day. And they had a good every chance they got seemed to end up in the back of the U.S. net. So for them, yes, probably not the result they wanted, but at the same time, it's a proud effort from them, and I think they definitely seized what they needed to today to really hold their heads high. So that's what we have for the news, for the scores. We will flip it now to our playoff picture, where we do see Of course, Canada playing the Slovaks and Sweden playing the USA in the semifinals. I think if you're looking for predictions from today, or 2 days from now's game, you have Canada, you have the Slovaks. I think it's pretty safe to say that Canada's going to walk them. But at the same time, it's not a guarantee. So I don't want to be the one who takes it. And of course, you can go watch the juniors clips where we did the prediction video. And I think every day after that was me saying something about how some team was going to walk over another team. And I was completely wrong. But the one thing I will say is Canada plays the Slovaks. Look for the Slovaks, try and stick around. If they can stick around, don't be surprised to see an upset. If Canada can pummel them in the first, 10, 15 minutes of the game, expect this one to be over early. So Canada, Slovakia is the first one. Then the good one, in my eyes, the game of the day between USA and Sweden. And this has been, in my eyes, the two or maybe not the two favorites. I think I had Sweden 1, USA, kind of Canada 2-3. The early tournament games kind of threw me for a loop with the U.S. losing to Norway, which I haven't given enough flack for yet. But over the next few days, I certainly will. But for the U.S., I think it's your game to lose. You already beat them once. But in my eyes, it's also Sweden is, in my eyes, the best team at this tournament. So now it's put up or shut up for them. And, they pummeled Finland today. We'll see what they got against the U.S. That's going to be a really good game. And we'll talk about now the times coming, of course, on May 2nd. So not tomorrow or today if you're watching it, but May 2nd at 4 p.m. Eastern time will be Canada and the Slovakia. Then at 8 p.m. Eastern between Sweden and the USA. And I think for Canada, it should be a walk. Should be okay. For the U.S. and Sweden, I think that's going to be a dogfight. And as much as I think it's the U.S.'s game to lose, I also think it's Sweden's game to lose. And I think both teams here very well could take this, and I don't think there is even a favorite for this game. So, to be completely honest, I got no prediction for that one. If you had to, if I had to pick, I'll take Sweden. I just think the Swedes are the better team on paper. And yes, they might have already won the first one, but I do think that Sweden has come a long way, and at least from what we saw today's game, it really would not surprise me to see the Swedes really try and run away with that game, especially if they can get on the board early. Yes, they got on the board early in their first matchup, and then sort of the U.S. clawed back, but I think this is a different Swedish team now, where if they get up early, they're going to close it out. So keep an eye on the Swedes. Yes, they're notorious chokers at these tournaments, but at the same time, I'm going to give the slight edge to them in this one. So that'll come up at 8 p.m. Be sure to come back for our day recap for that one. But that will do it for our scheduled program. We'll now move to live questions. We have 2 questions today. First one from Tommy Betts NHL, who says, how's your bracket looking for this tourney? And it's like outside of what I would probably argue to be the upsets in the prelims, where you have, the Sweden-US one, in my eyes, is probably the biggest one we saw. Early tournament kind of threw me for a loop. I would have had, in my eyes, it was kind of a big four of the Czechs, Canada, the US, and the Swedes. And then it was kind of a dogfight within there. And then all of a sudden, the US lost to Norway. And it was like, I don't know about that anymore. But in the end, that was kind of the big four I had. I was going to end in some capacity of that. And then, of course, so the bracket, as much as I didn't end up making one, would sit somewhere like this, where the Slovaks just are the odd team out there. But I do think that the Slovaks were a team that very well could have contended, and they sure did. And so for Canada, you get a little bit of an easier path in. You thank the standings for that. Sweden, in my eyes, is still the team to beat at this tournament. Yes, they have a little bit tougher path to get to the gold medal. But, well, of course, time will tell, because I've now laid out my predictions as to what I think will happen. So now, of course, it's the time for me to be wrong in this one. So after we are for the first question, then to the second one we go from Nick, the IIHF fan, who says, what a game between Canada and Czechia. After the preliminary round Canada had, I wondered if they were going to get a wake-up call, that not every game would be easy. and very, very much got one against a Czech team that I think was better than their record indicated. As I'm writing this, we don't yet know who Canada will face in the semifinal. Latvia if they win, Slovakia if the U.S. wins. But I think both will come ready to play in the semifinals, and Canada should be too. And absolutely, and I think when you look at it, you know, today's game was a wake-up call for Canada. And as much as it's nice to say that it didn't, it did. And the Czechs were a team that I think Canada in many ways expected to walk over. But at the same time, they were a good team that very well could have, you know, the Czechs were a team that, in my eyes, were part of that Big Four, and they very well could have upset Canada at this tournament, but they didn't. So what's to come of that? Who knows? Unfortunately for the Czechs, they are gone today. But I do think that very well could have replaced Canada at this tournament. That was not as safe as a game as they made it out to be, and they played definitely down to the Czechs' level at this game. And it wasn't even that they played down to them in my eyes. It was as much as it was they just didn't play up to their level. And for Canada, those are the kind of games you need to make sure you play for a full 60 minutes, because if you don't, you take, you know, moments off, then it's the 24 or 25 World Juniors all over again in the quarterfinals, where the Czechs just seem to have one lucky bounce that ends up costing you. And one other thing that I realized I forgot to mention in this video was that there was also the relegation game today between Norway and Switzerland. Norway did take it 5-4 in a shootout. No game coverage of that one, so once again, another problem with the North American thing where I can't get on the IIHF TV's page, but I also can't watch games on TSN because they don't have it. So anyway, that's what the score, 5-4 in a shootout today. Norway stays up, Switzerland goes down. But with that, if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Please drop a like if you're likes, or subscribing. Tell all your friends and comment down below your thoughts on the quarterfinal action from the U18 Championship. Until next time,